shall we play a game?
We got Star Wars Unlimited. We got classic Star Wars games. We got old school D&D, independent RPGs, mini painting, Warhammer, of course, tons of other games. But first, we're gonna need some coffee here on Board Barista Productions.
All right, let's do one more. All right. Tonight is Dragon Magazine number 325 here on Retro Reviews, review show where we go through my copious amounts of gaming books, magazines, and other paraphernalia one at a time. And for color commentary, your viewing pleasure, lots of other things, we have Tanya.
Hey guys.
All right. So like I said, my sound? Is it picking up your what?
Is it picking up my sound?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Because usually my screen highlights blue and has this little sound thingy. So there may be sound from the kiddo and Josh coming through earlier for their.
There was a little bit on the when we were recording last week's episode, but it was just a little bit. All right. So this issue marks a format change in the magazine. You can actually tell the lettering on Dragon is a little bit different than that's next week's issue I have over here. I don't know where I said it. So yeah, the traditional, more stylized version of the Dragon logo, as opposed to the more professional, modern looking. Doesn't look very D&D-ish.
It doesn't. It's so bland.
It is. So, and I got some notes on that with next week's issue. So remind me to double back to that next week. But for this week, first article in Dragon Magazine number 325 is Under Command. It's the challenge campaign, how to do narrative campaigns for D&D minis. There's two examples. Basically, they're kind of stock missions for D&D, but there was really no way to kind of do it in miniature form unless you're doing like a narrative campaign where it's like you play one game, and depending on win or lose, you get bonuses in the next game, and so on until you run through all the scenarios. So, of course, we're doing the mega dungeon crawls where we have the Lost Labyrinth. It's a vault full of weapons that was built by two nations that decided to literally bury the hatchets along with the halberts, the long swords, and everything else. They took all of their weapons of war and locked it up underground. And now you and your friend are a warband fighting over all of this sweet, loot that's down underground to be able to kill each other with. The next scenario they decided to do is what if a lich got killed by a bunch of adventurers before his tomb got finished? So there's a half-built lich's tomb in the middle of nowhere that a bunch of goblins moved into and took over. That would be. So it's that's cool. If I was to do that in a D&D game, I would take the Tomb of Horrors and have none of the actual it's going to kill you part of the traps have actually been are there. It's just fall damage, and then there's random goblins here, there, and everywhere instead of all the monsters into it. You could actually lower down the Tomb of Horrors challenge rating instead of being you need to be super high level to survive this. It's no, all the magical traps are gone, and it's just goblins, and then that dungeon becomes a lot less deadly. Next article is Silicon Sorcery. They were looking at the Dungeon Siege video game, and they were talking about synergistic spellbooks, so artifact level spellbooks, which based on the total spell levels that you memorize out of it, grants you an extra power. So you have the Book of Robust, gives bonus HP and bonuses to your fortitude saves. So it's basically you've studied all of these, it's all the spells in there are health type stuff. So you're oh yeah, I've been studying about all this healthy stuff. It makes me more healthy. There's the Book of Elemental Attunement, which allows the caster can gain a swim speed or different types of elemental spells as like bonus actions. You actually get to cast them as instead of spells, they're like more like supernatural powers or spell-like abilities.
Yep.
There's the Book of Warding, which makes you immune to magic missiles. It gives you evasion and displacement because you're learning all these defensive spells. Next article is a novel approach. It is converting Frank Herbert's Dune to Dungeons and Dragons. So we get stats for the Spice Melange and the stats for the Orange Seer, which are basically people who have been mutated. Bless you. And again.
Thank you. Sorry.
So you get the people who basically their bodies are bloated and mutated because they've been exposed to too much spice. And then they kind of did a cop out. They just gave you like conversion, like some notes on how to convert a purple worm into a sandworm. So I'm like, oh man, wish we get like 2 things, and it's like 2.5 things for this. The next article is Hometown Heroes. It's an article that helps with fleshing out characters' backstory in hometown. This would definitely be. It's definitely kind of cool to like, especially like in your early days of DMing with a group, and you start in a little like, you got like a major city and like a town and a couple towns in like the geography mapped out for a place, but you don't have like specific little villages and places like that. Getting the players to flesh out the character backstories and then hand that to you and have them be from like different places. Then you can actually just like, you got the notes on like what that town is like, and you're just like, I'm going to put it here. It really helps the players be part of the world building process.
Yeah, that's what Josh was trying to do when we were first starting out, however long ago we started out.
Which is one of those things of like, it's like a homework assignment that you got to spell out as this is actual homework. And really in that session 0 of like inviting your players in to be like, I got nothing. I need some help, which is why, last week we ended the episode talking about how I want to design my own role-playing game. One of the things I want to put in there, especially for the space thing, is like a way to be like, okay, if you want to play an alien, play an alien. Here's the alien weird charts for picking your, like, what does it look like? And then there's like a sheet to be able to fill in to be like, okay, what is the name? What do your aliens do? Where are they from? What kind of environment do they live in? Like, fill this out, name your homeworld, and let your DM copy it. And guess what? You've just created a new alien race and a new planet to populate this galaxy. I like that. It's the whole thing of like, here's a sheet, fill it out. Here's a sheet, fill it out, get it back to me, get a copy back to me. We're good. Like, that's cool. Just being like, tell me about it. If if it's not written down, nobody remembers it. So advice, if you're doing this kind of thing, using articles or handouts in order to flesh out the world more, make sure it's written down. Both the player and the DM have an exact copy, so there's no arguing back and forth of like, oh, well, I said that, and it's right here, man. This is how I sent it to you. This is the same PDF. You're DMing it wrong. Next article is Arcane Ancestry 2. So it's a selection of bloodline feats. These are feats for sorcerers to tap into, because every sorcerer gets their spells from some sort of like, grandma got hit on by a dragon coming home from the tavern on Christmas Eve or something like that. So now if you took the feats, if you give up getting special abilities through like arcane magic training for meta magic feats or combat training. If you just take your feats you get from leveling up and put them into your ancestry, you're tapping into and unlocking more of that ancestry. So you get ones for like demons, which get a emotional, like that one lets you have like a spell that controls people's emotions. You get bonus. You get to know an extra one of those for each level. They're basically all pretty much based on like what kind of thing you got as an ancestry. It gives you like an extra bonus spell known. So demons, it's emotions. If somebody that's descended from something on a lawful aligned plane, you get the location, like detection spells, like detect evil or detect good. You get a bonus like one of those type of spells per level. You can also, if like you and your cat have been in the same families for a really long time, you can get a familiar bonus because it's like, no, you don't like remember that like that story meme thing that pops up every once in a while about the dog talking about the whole thing of like he has watched over us for generations.
Yeah.
He my grandfather knew him when he was a boy, kind of thing. Like if your familiar has lived with your family for generations.
Technically, Kingdom was my familiar because his great 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 grandmother, Cat, had been part of the family, but they only lived to be about 5 or 7 years old before they'd end up dying.
Yeah.
But they'd have 5 kittens every flipping time they got pregnant.
Right. And if it was something like that, where that bloodline of that cat has been in your family for generations, you're able to, as a wizard, you're able to tap into that bloodline connection of the cat as a sorcerer. You tap into the whole thing. Like, no. It's like I have been with this bloodline for so long. I have a better bond with them. Almost like your familiar is almost like, I'm a warlock. I have a patron, kind of thing. Yeah. Or it can also be like your people have always had a strong connection to like your familiars people. What else was there? There's like if you're descended from snake people, you get extra hypnosis spells. Next article was war magic. It's mostly tips and tricks for using spell in war. We get
surviving them.
We get the energy substitution feat. This actually popped up in a few other places in D&D, where it's a metamagic feat where you can swap out the energy type of the spell, so you can actually have like a fireball be a lightning ball. Just to make a spell more tactically versatile. Next article is a surge of theurgy. It's feats which combine class abilities. So basically, allows. They're all like based off of like combining different types of magic. So you get basically like what the first one, the aligned theurgy allows you to use domain spells to count like your divine spellcaster level and your arcane spellcaster levels get to count together. So it's like if you're like a 4th level cleric and a 5th level wizard, and it's like, what's your caster level? It's like 9th. Alternative source spells basically lets you prepare a arcane spell as a divine spell or vice versa. You get combined empathy If you have your levels for the wild empathy ability for druids and rangers, so if you're getting the ability from 2 separate classes and it's the same thing, you get to stack the levels. Basically, this kind of article and these kind of like, oh, I got this, and it's kind of the same thing, or is the same thing. Why can't I just count it both together? Ended up being so prevalent in 3.5 from here towards the end of it that Pathfinder actually picked up the whole thing, where they decided to be like, it's the same class ability. So if you get it for this same class ability from this class and this class, you just add them together naturally. You don't have to waste a feat in order to do it. Next article is the ecology of the Druger. It's the history, psychology, society, laws, and how to both fight as and fight with the dwarves of the Underdark. So, next article is the Myths of Shadow. It's a spell book for the Black Coat Thieves Guild. So there's all these like stealth-based, shadowy, thievy spells. Basically, if you're playing like an assassins, end up getting spells, or if you're multi-class, you get Appraising Touch. You can basically pick something up and identify its value. Which that right there is a very handy spell for anyone to have. You get the Dead End, which basically hides your tracks. So it's almost like, you're running down the hallway, down the alley, you cast Dead End behind you, and it might create like an illusionary end of the hallway kind of thing, where it's like it breaks off and they're like, it dead ended, or your tracks just disappear. Then there's marked men. You can basically, as long as you can tag somebody, they become marked, and you're able to use magically sense where they're going to track them. And spontaneous search basically does what you think it does. It is, you cast spontaneous search, saying what you're going to search for in an area of a room, and it's like you get the whole like detect magic. It's right over there.
Okay.
Next article is the artifacts of the Pharaoh. So we get some Egyptian themed magical items. We get the Canoptic Jars of the Guardians, which helps you with raising mummies from the dead, not actually like getting them from diapers to college. Next article is the Belt of the Camel. Basically, the wearer can survive in the desert. And we get the Serpent Bracers, which are a pair of bracers that give you bonuses to your fortitude save against poison. Next article is Getting Schooled. It's feats for specialist wizards that improve the spells of a set school of magic. So basically, if a charmer can get +1 to improves your DC for your charm spells by 1. Hidden Thoughts gives you a bonus to saves versus divination and mind reading spells. Just ways to, like, if you specialize in a certain school of magic, you get to do your thing just a little bit better. Because that was one of the things about specialists. It was supposed to be like, you're really good at this one thing, but it really was only like you got like extra bonus spells, and you were more versatile in doing that, and you had to pick a spell, a type of magic that you couldn't use. But it was like getting the feats in there ended up being like, yeah, they should have been baked in from the beginning. Because it really was, nobody really wanted to specialize in the old school. Next article is the Bowman Charger. So you don't want to play a paladin, and you don't want to play a ranger, but you're kind of trapped in this whole thing of like, because the ranger's all like, I'm an artillery piece, I'm firing arrows, or I'm dual wielding swords, and the paladin's all like, I charge into battle on my horse. You're like, I want to do what the paladin does, but I want to do it with a bow. But instead of charging into battle, I want to run around the battlefield and snipe people as I'm going past. Guess what? You want to play a bowman charger. So basically just a prestige class, so you can actually do that better because the rules were not really designed to have that kind of character in mind. Next article is Lupins. It is a playable race of werewolf people with notes on their culture and society. So basically a watered down werewolf you can start out at level 1. Next section of articles is this is the what they call a class acts. This is like the new, like you've seen so far. The articles have been pretty much the standard format. We'll get some new magical items, new spells, prestige classes. Usually in the past, it was like one of those type of articles each, and then they move on. They started doing the class acts, where basically everybody got every base class gets a page.
Yeah, I noticed that. We already kind of figured out what the flaws are of our characters because we've hit them.
Because we what?
Because we already hit them. Okay, why is that thing making so funky? Is it because I'm too far away?
I don't know.
Huh.
Everything's looking good on my end.
I noticed the barbarian there. I was reading
the barbarian?
The flaws for the barbarian. I'm going, yeah, that's the Wookiee.
Yeah, we'll hit upon those when we get down to it. That's like it ends up the class acts for the reviews end up basically being like we got like a ton of different like short articles they condensed like a bunch of stuff into. So tools of the trade is for fighters. Basically it's like a little section on like what kind of weapon should you use, like a primary, like what makes a good primary weapon is something that's going to have a good crit range and hit really hard. You got skill bonus. Basically it's like skip doing range combat unless you take all the feats for it. And use weapons that like special ability weapons like flails and long spears and morning stars and such. Like they're able to like weapon that lets you able to do like a combat maneuver better is definitely something to take. It's pretty simple stuff, but it's a cheat sheet for like you're a fighter. What kind of weapon do you use? Here, let's pick something good for you. Or if you picked up a certain weapon, it's like, okay, you should go towards these kind of feats. So it's kind of like a little guiding idea for weapon selection for fighters. Next one is more faith, less fight for it's cleric builds that are less focused on melee, where you got like the scholar cleric looking for skills and defense and magical and knowledge spells. You got the pastoral cleric, which focuses mostly on healing and buffing powers, and the devout cleric, which damage they deal is dealt by their spells, not their weapon. So it's the whole thing of like, demon be gone, feel the power of hairspray. Then you got the next is the apprentice trick, ways to use first level spells creatively. So arcane mark is you create a mystical sigil on something that only other magic users can detect. It's a great way for doing like hidden tattoos. Using open close to spring traps at a range instead of actually like, well, we're going to try to open this chest. It's like, hang on. Everybody step back 20 feet. All right. Open. And the chest opens up and then it actually fires out like the poison gas. And you're like, oh, we're far enough away. We're not going to take any damage. And prestidigitation is a spell that basically lets you do minor magic effects that last for an hour. And if you got the right DM and you're good at BSing, you can pretty much abuse the crap out of prestidigitation.
Yeah.
The next article is the multi-class rogue. This is a one-page article on taking other classes with rogue. You can go back in our previous things, and there's much better, like 2 to 4 page. This is what you do with rogues and multi-classing. Them trying to put that into one page was a horrible idea. It does not cover enough information. The flaws for barbarians. I know last episode we talked a lot about I talked a lot about the game that I want to design, and ever since flaws first started showing up in 3.5, basically they were introduced in Urban and Unearthed Arcana, and you could take a flaw and it would make you it would give you some sort of downside. You took it and you were able to select a bonus feat. So you're like, I'll take this flaw to get a special ability. I have basically almost every single D&D campaign I have run since then, I have made taking a flaw mandatory. It's like you have to have a flaw. It's like you're going to take a flaw, you're going to get a bonus feat, and your flaw is like a downside that if you role play it well, I'll reward you better. One of the last campaigns I ran, one of the guys had the flaw that he was deaf. And he role played that so well. At least twice per session, somebody had to be like, he's deaf. To not probably twice, but it felt like twice. But it at least once this time, it would be like, he's deaf, or he would have, or the player Travis would have to be like, we're like, oh yeah, he's deaf. So it's just like, so flaws for barbarians ended up basically being stuff that was tied to their rage.
Yep.
Like, blind, like you can't end it voluntarily. It takes a lot to make you go into a rage. You will attack your fellow party members if you're still raging and you don't have anything to attack. And because you're so, and also they putting gullible as being a flaw for a barbarian, because you're so quick to emotion that if somebody like tells you something, you're like, they are a true friend, I believe them. Like everything, you wear your heart on your sleeve. You expect everyone else to do it because you're so in touch with your emotions. You wouldn't believe anybody. You wouldn't believe that people would lie to you. But yeah, no, the game that I'm working on, flaws, is like part of how you get your skills. Your starting skills is you got to take a flaw to get, like, if you don't take a flaw, you end up with less starting skills. So, Druid meets World. The philosophy of an adventuring druid, the whole thing of like, I have a grove and a place where I have to defend. I can't go so far away from home. I got to stay here. It's a pretty, like, it was designed to be part of second edition as being like the downside of playing the druid is you had to like motivate them to get out into the world or else they just wouldn't leave. And it's like, oh, come on. There's your little forest. It's like your little forest is but a bush in the big forest that is the world. And what happens to the bush? When a forest fire hits the bush, it goes on to the next bush and then the trees. They're all connected. Any druid that can't put that into their head it's not a druid. You're not thinking about the big picture of how, because you're so in touch with the world on your small scale. You should be that much in touch with the world on the grand scale. If anybody would be advocating for the whole fact of like going as far as you need to in order to complete the mission of the campaign, it would be the druid, because he'd be like, it's all interconnected, dude. The crunchy hippie would be like, it's all part of the big picture, man. You got to think globally. we pollute the lake, it pollutes the river. I mean, okay. Enough about me trying to campaign for druids. Sorcerer strategy is how to make a sorcerer more of a tactical player than an artillery piece, because usually people see sorcerers as like big fireball, but you're a spontaneous caster, which means you can cast any spell at any time. And if you choose your spells right, you can be like, okay, let's figure this out. Let's take, and it gives you like a whole list of spells to take and how they can be beneficial and when to swap them out on different levels. And it's a little like the SWAT team sorcerer instead of the whole thing of like the battle caster, the artillery piece sorcerer. And I like that kind of thing of having that kind of framework to look at. Next is tracking and trailing. It's one-page article. Oh, they're all one page. It's an article all about tracking, reading trails and prints and stuff like that. It felt like very much a lesson from a Boy Scout handbook that's been distilled down. Again, it's another one of these like, you're just giving us a one-page article, so it feels like we have more articles in the magazine than we really do. Because some of them are going to be hit and misses and why bothers, and some of them are going to be bangers. But dealing with friends and allies, how paladins can deal with non-good aligned party members. This is so... I've been reading the Dungeons and Dragons and Philosophy book. Okay? I almost feel like the whole thing of like, if you can't figure out how to wrap around the alignments like system to be able to have the thief and the paladin exist in the same party, and you haven't figured out your shady shenanigans to get it past the DM to be like, we have a kleptomaniac thief and a Boy Scout holier than thou paladin in the same party. And the thief has to basically hide everything from the paladin. It makes for great role play, but if you, as a DM, come down hard on that, you're gonna end up like really just getting too far out into the metaphysical weeds, and you're gonna distract from the story. But if you want some quick tips, the kind of tips that you can get in one page, as your paladin, try to channel the party towards good. Try to get them to make good choices. Establish boundaries. Be clear at what your paladin is okay and not okay with what happens. To basically give your rogue a shopping list of the rogue and the bard, the list of like, okay, we can only do this when somebody else is distracting the paladin. Take them next door. Take them to get a shave and a haircut and some armor polish. We're going to go do the stuff that's on this list. Zone of influence. Do what you can. As a paladin, you have to understand that they may be murder hobos, but you can only stop them from being murder hobos when they're within eyesight. Don't go hunting them down when they go off to do their own thing. Trust that they will make good choices. And always have loyalty towards your allies. They're the ones that are going to be there with you when you are in the dungeon and you just got stabbed and you're bleeding out and you're out of healing magic yourself, and the cleric is out of healing magic yourself. The bard, like, coming over and bandaging you and doing a little bit of his, like, very bad healing magic, or just using his heal skill to keep you from dying. It's important. He won't be around if you hammered on him for the past 3 game sessions about wenching every time we go to town. He might have just been like, I can't deal with you anymore, peace out, and he's not there for that battle. And that's probably why the cleric is unconscious and you are bleeding out. So be loyal to your allies. Don't try to turn your friends against you. All right, that's monks. I know I said it earlier in this series. I am sick and tired of monk combat feat trees, like martial arts styles, I am so happy that this is one of the last few issues of Dragon Magazine to review. And the article about the monk has nothing to do with a martial arts style. It is all about monk magical items. So we have the size of the hornet. It's a pair of sais that have the dancing magical property. So you basically just huck them into the air. They float around you, and it's like you have like floaty magical ninja weapons that attack for you. That is cool. We have the brands of the Iron Monkey. They give you a +2 bonus to your initiative, and if you do not have the deflect arrows feat, you get to deflect arrows by hitting them with the brands of the monkey. You get to cosplay as Wonder Woman and hit first. You have the Obi of the White Lotus Master. It is basically you have gotten your black belt. So you put your black belt on, and now everybody sees that, and now they're a little bit intimidated to hit you. They don't want to hit you, so they hold back a little bit, and you get +4 to your AC because you're walking around with I am the master.
So pretty much Uncle Iroh.
Kind of. It's not like I'm trying to describe like how is wearing a cloth sash going to give you an AC bonus of +4, but this is a magical +4 belt that gives you armor. It's a really impressive belt.
Uncle Iroh was untouchable. Well, actually, all the Lotus Masters were untouchable. They
all had their belts on.
Yeah.
They weren't tripped. They pulled their pants up. They put the belt on. They weren't tripping all over the place. Somewhere out there's somebody who's young who's got their pants around their knees. I'm telling, pull up your pants. Get the AC bonus. And then you got the staff of the Crushing Breeze. It's a +2 quarterstaff that if you do not have the improved trip feat, you get to use the improved trip feat. Next is the Bard article. And it's skills and knowledge. It's tricks. It's advice for bardic knowledge. One of them is to keep an adventure journal. If you're playing the Bard and something happens, and it's the DM tells you some information, jot it down. That way you can be like, I'm going to use bardic knowledge and check my notes. Put ranks into each of the knowledge skills. Just because you have bardic knowledge doesn't mean you get any bonuses. You're just able to use your knowledge skill, and you get a little bonus. But if you put ranks into knowledge and you're using bardic knowledge, the two of them stack, and it gets even better. And make deals with the DM. Like, get the whole like, and yes, it's the whole thing of like, if you're DM and you're like, can I make a? It's like I'll roll my bardic knowledge and I roll so super high. Will you like? What's the key pieces of information you want me to tell them? And I'll just I can make up some other stuff. Like if there's there's going to be a point in the game where it's like, like you've done your DM prep, you've got your notes, and it's like a certain point where you're going to be like, roll a bardic knowledge check for me. If you can trust your player enough that you can hand them an index card and be like, when I ask you to roll the bardic knowledge check, at least have these key pieces of information, because I know you're going to pass it. Have these key pieces of information and just make up the rest. And I'll just go with it.
Can I let you in on a secret?
Of course.
So we're going up against an infinite life source this Wednesday. We cannot kill it. So let's not attack where we're the two paladins that attack.
Okay. I wonder if we can. I might have to pull an Eagly.
Okay.
Ever read Glory Road by Robert Heinlein?
No, but I have had a friend who did. So I kind of know what you're talking about.
So Eagly was, for everybody who hasn't read Glory Road, Eagly was a monster that couldn't be defeated. Like no weapon would be able to damage it. So the hero of it used physics. Ended up putting the hand of the monster into its mouth, and then forced its elbow, and basically like forced its arm up, and then forced the other arm in, and forced the feet in, and then started like rolling it back and forth, and then it got to the point where he was rubbing the monster in between his palms until it disappeared into nothing. Pulling Eagly, it's like collapsing the whole thing. And those kind of like crazy ideas, and that bardic knowledge of like, we can't kill it. What do we do? It's like, well, I heard in a story once that somebody fought the creature Eagly and did this to it. You know, if you roll a really high bardic knowledge, you can just, if your DM's cool with it, and then your DM's like, okay, but how are you going to do this?
We don't have a bard, right? No, yes, we do. Sam.
Yeah, but I have to give Sam the whole idea of like, dude, but that's me using like player knowledge and stuff like that, which is something I'm like, the game that I want to design, that I'm designing, that would technically be considered what I would call, and it's a little rules preview for you, because you're going to get to see this before everyone else does that's watching the videos. I decided to bake metagaming into the rules. So there's actually a skill. You actually, under one of your abilities, there is a skill that you can use untrained, because all your skill star is untrained, and then you're trained into them to get better ranks in it. And it's called metagaming. And based on your success of rolling your metagame skill, you get to make up stuff, and the DM has to just go with it. It's a complete whole thing of like, you can use you can like reference, like it's the whole like, you can reference like you're fighting a vampire. It's like, okay, I'm gonna grab a wooden stake. It's like you're metagaming, or it's like, hey, my character's never fought a vampire before. Can I metagame? Roll your metagaming. It's like, okay, you got a success enough to go a wooden, like, what do you know? It's like wooden stake, sunlight, decapitation. Okay, but you got, like, I'm using the D6 model, so if there's if it's like the wild die comes up as a 1, it's the whole thing. The DM gets to be like, all right, yes, decap. You got 3 successes. Yes, those are the 3 things. But this one is like a special vampire that actually has like an added bonus defense. Like it has to be like like we're fighting a vampire. I got to stab it with a wooden stake through the heart. I can expose it to sunlight, or I can cut off its head. And the DM can be, they got 1 failure. The DM can be like, okay, but here's the thing. It has to be a piece of living wood. It cannot be dried and cured. It must be cut green off of, it must still be green, and there still needs to be a little bit of sap in it to kill the vampire. Like you can negotiate that kind of thing. Like that whole like bardic knowledge. I got a lot of inspirations, like I said, reading through these articles. I'm like, yes, and I think Josh is going to have a field day with the metagame skill. I think the first character he ever does, he's just going to use all of his skill points to max out metagaming, and it's just he's going to love that ability. Although I'm going to love it because it's like, it's not just the wild die that's an automatic failure and the DM gets to make up stuff. It's every single one that you roll. Okay, enough about that. Metagame Metamorphosis talks about metagaming. And that's the whole thing of like a high intelligence character knows more things than your player does, than the actual player does, and using the knowledge and skills to allow the PCs to like using bardic knowledge. So at the like this whole next article like sparked me off on that whole tangent for metagaming, because I've always loved like letting players roll their characters. Like, I can't figure this out. Let me roll an intelligence roll to try to get a clue. Like in my game that I'm designing, that's baked in. It's actually the skill, like figure it out. It's the whole thing of like you roll, if you're ever stumped, you just roll your figure it out, and the DM's got to give you like advice on stuff. Or you have experience, or letting players use certain skills that are like, that doesn't sound like it would fit in. Like when we played Ninja Burger, you got all those different skills, and you just BS. Like, how are you using your restaurant skill in this situation? It's like, oh, because I gotta get people, I gotta like bluff this guy to make him think that I work here. I'm not going to roll my bluff. I'm going to roll my manager. I'm going to come in there like I'm running the place, like I'm the shift manager, and start bossing around. Okay, use creative use of other skills. Good job. That's ways to handle metagaming, where it's like I've got the knowledge, but my character doesn't have the skill. I'll just use a different skill. The next to last article is adventuring SWAT style. So basically using tactics. The advice is that you should gain surprise whenever you can. So like always have like high stealth skills. So there's always somebody that's like not noticed, so you can get act first in combat. Have a lot of DPS. Have a lot of characters that can actually do massive amounts of damage in one shot. Because if you kill them all before they can counterattack, you win the encounter. Tactical weapons that work with feats, like the monk weapon that gives you improved trip, or a cleaver so you can get like a cleaver on a pole so you can actually like get reach and advantages, and like use weapons that have special abilities that you can gain an advantage with. Always wear light armor when you're playing SWAT style, because you don't want to have any penalties to your stats, such as hide and shadow, sneak, and move silently. And in order to avoid that, you can also get stealth gear, robe of Elvenkind, boots of Elvenkind, magical gear that improves all of these different skills. Use a lot more scrolls. If a wizard, a sorcerer, or other arcane caster is not the only person that can use a scroll. Other people, if they've got the use scroll ability, can use them as well. So you can have multiple redundancies in case the magic user goes down. You got somebody for backup, or more DPS. Have everybody that can cast from a scroll cast a fireball from the scroll during that whole like we snuck up, we all cast fireball type around, and have some anti-monster type weapons. Always make sure that you're carrying a bludgeoning weapon, a piercing weapon, and a slashing weapon, because you never know when you might be fighting skeletons, zombies, or just what is it that takes more damage from piercing? I don't know, like eye monsters? I can't remember off the top of my head. There's like some monster out there that takes more damage from piercing. Because skeletons take more from bludgeoning, zombies take more from slashing, and they don't feel. And there's something out there that's like piercing damage does more to them, but I can't remember. But it's not like a common type of undead. But I usually like to make sure I've got a slashing weapon and a piercing weapon, just because it's like the most undead are all like, we got this. But yeah, that's SWAT adventuring. I've always wanted to write a book, write a module where basically people go and train at a guild to get the experience of SWAT adventuring. Last article is Sage Advice. This is the monthly FAQ column where people write in their questions, and hopefully they get an answer. So this month this issue is all about the ethereal plane. So ethereal means other plane of reality, and corporeal means on the material plane but not material. So if you go to the if you go ethereal, you end up on the ethereal plane, which is like a plane where basically everybody's floating in outer space, and there might be stuff there, and there's like other monsters and stuff that all exist on this plane of existence. Incorporeal means you're still on this plane of existence. You're just nothing, like stuff just floats right, you just float right through stuff. There's like a lot of people got that kind of mixed up. And a piece of advice about the whole like going ethereal or incorporeal. Well, no, ethereal, you can still be on this plane of existence, but you're like not in this reality, but you're able to perceive this reality. Ethereal spells are like weird. They have their whole own sub layer of stuff. Because normally the ethereal plane and the material plane like never interact, but when you go ethereal, you're able to see the stuff that's on the ethereal plane, as well as it's like wearing like one of those like Google Glass, and you're like trying to watch like picture in picture type thing. And some people have tried using that, like, I'm gonna become ethereal on myself so I can scout through this dungeon and just walk through the dungeon wall and go around and not have to worry about anything. The piece of advice they gave for how to counteract that is to go full HP Lovecraft on them, because the spell that allows people to go ethereal only works on the caster. It does not work on somebody else. It does not work on the whole party. It's one being, and it's yourself. And when you're on this like other plane of existence, this other dimension of reality, and still able to perceive this one, basically think about it. Like ethereal is like you've gone to the fifth dimension. There's chances are there's going to be some fifth dimension style monsters, some things from beyond that are going to notice you and try to eat you or something, or attack you or whatnot. And one of H.P. Lovecraft's stories is called From Beyond, where this scientist creates a machine that like allows people to interact and see, like allows people to see the ethereal plane, and all these like crazy like fifth dimensional monsters would start attacking everybody. No. Right up my alley. Like, you're going to try to cheat the dungeon, and it's like open season on your character for like, here's an ethereal elder horror monster that's going to come in, try to, chase after you. Have fun. It's like, it's like, how do I, it's like, you should go back to your own plane of existence. Now that elder thing is like aware of you and like trying to figure out like how to track you down now. It's like, ooh, it's a whole campaign and like one out of like one action of your party member trying to cheat their way through. Everybody have fun with that. All right. That is all of that issue. We have one last Dragon magazine, but we're going to call it for this episode as well as for the night. So I want to thank, I know my voice is starting to go because I need some water real quick. I need some food as well. I want to thank everybody for joining us. If you, spoiler alert, there's going to be some teasers coming out in the future. Every time we're talking about something, I'm like, I stole this for my game. People are going to get an idea of how it's going to go. I'm going to try not to like put too much stuff out there, but once I get it done, I really want people to play test it and try it out. So I'm going to definitely be sharing it, beta testing. Nice. So if people are interested, leave that comment down below if you want to become one of my beta testers to help me out with this. But yeah, it's my love project right now. I'm just filling up pages and pages and pages of journal entries with notes. So I can't wait to do it. But I need to stop this episode and just say peace.
Peace out. See y'all next week.
Hey everybody, thanks for staying till the end of the episode. Remember to like, share, subscribe. Follow us on Facebook at Board Barista Productions. And if you want to support us, Patreon link at the bottom.